Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host. Her self-isolation days are like any other. She's up for a run and a dog walk, Leanne Hughes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes, and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. Thank you for joining me today and tuning in wherever you are in the world. I think the most overused phrase, and one that I'm using myself, so I'll stick my hand up and say I'm using it a lot too, is the phrase, I hope you're keeping safe, or I hope you're keeping well. And it's fine. I think it's really nice that we're showing concern for each other, but I didn't want to say that in this episode, but I just want to let you know that I am thinking of all of you listeners, and I really appreciate you tuning in, and I trust and have no doubt that you are doing what's best for you to get yourself and our communities through all of this. I started my listening tour last week and it's been so much fun. The listening tour is quick 20-minute catch-ups with people all around the world. I just book in using my Calendly link, and I caught up with people that I know really well, people that I know from just emails and socials, and people like whose names I just had no idea who they were or that they even listened to the show. And so it was kind of like a roulette, just spinning the wheel and jumping into 20-minute conversations about all different topics. I absolutely loved it. The conversations had no agenda. So I guess going in, both of us really didn't know where it was going to go. So just wanted to reach out and thank everyone that was part of that. And I've got another day of listening to a ship this week, which I'm excited about. Now, today's guest, I met him when I was actually a participant in one of his sessions during the Institute for Learning Professionals conference in Brisbane 3 years ago. He was talking about how we can sell learning to people within our organisation. But one thing he mentioned, which really stood out for me in that session, is that he mentioned the role of learning and development people and how we can be perceived as order takers when we should be the subject matter experts. So let me explain that. And I'll go back to even my marketing days, which is about 10 years ago. Part of my role was marketing the courses for our lecturers at this college. And one of the courses it was actually targeted at people who were illiterate and helping them to read and write. And the lecturer came up to me and goes, right, we need to advertise this. You need to put it in the paper. So she was giving me an order to put it in the paper. And I thought about it and I was like, well, this is a course about reading and writing. Surely something more like auditory, maybe a radio ad might be more appropriate. But often, and even bringing that into learning and development, I remember working internally and leaders were like, well, this is a problem, we need a workshop. So they'd already come up with the solution. But when you actually started probing and asking more questions about their problem and the audience, you could very quickly figure out that just maybe the workshop wasn't the answer. So I just loved how he phrased that as order takers. And I think our role, particularly if you work internally or with any client really, is doing that assessment, thinking, right, is a workshop or something virtual the answer? Today's guest, his name is Matthew Mason, and we also appeared on a panel together run by Petra Zink. She was a guest on the show. We were on that panel last year, and when it comes to creating online learning experiences, Matthew is the guru. So yeah, of course I had to get him on the show. He is the Chief Learning Architect at Superb Learning, an innovative content development and training business focused on better training and better outcomes by working with organisations to develop modern and creative learning solutions. Superb is actually a very clever acronym for the standards they bring to learning, which include story-based, user experience, performance, evaluation, relevant, and bite-sized. Matthew is recognised both as a certified online learning facilitator and a certified learning professional for the Asia Pacific Institute for Learning and Development. That's the ILP. Now, this year, I've actually volunteered to be a Queensland Regional Advocate. So I've seen Matthew a few times around the digs there this year. He's also the co-director of the Certified Learning Institute, providing learning professionals with practical, actionable and relevant training to keep them ahead of the curve. And he's a director of Reality Creators, an innovative learning and development company specialising in the development of immersive learning experiences. This includes all that stuff like VR, augmented reality, 360-degree videos and interactive videos. So Matthew and I recorded this interview pre-COVID. However, it could not come to you at a more relevant time, particularly as we talk about how to move our face-to-face workshop events online, how to create communities and helpful tools that you can use to create online learning, and more importantly, keep people engaged. If you'd like to connect with Matthew, you can visit the show notes over at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 115. Now, I'm in the process of, with my VA Gracie, to actually switch my website over from WordPress to Squarespace in the next couple of weeks. So there'll be a brand new website, which is exciting. I love Squarespace. I think it's a perfect tool for solopreneurs, but I can talk more about that in another episode. And it certainly creates a debate. Particularly WordPress people are very, very faithful. And look, WordPress isn't bad. Anyway, that's for another episode. If you'd like to join the conversation when this episode is over, join our community of over 760 facilitators from all over the world on the free group called the Flip Chart. That's also in the show notes. Okay, can't wait to share my interview with Matthew with you. Now onto the show. I'm delighted to welcome onto the First Time Facilitator podcast, Matthew Mason from Superb Learning. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks. It's really looking forward to it.
Now, Matt, I've met you a few times, but I was on your website recently finding out a bit more about you before the interview, and I didn't know you had a bit of a background in horses. So I wish you could share with our listeners how on earth you discovered the world of learning and development, considering where you started from.
Okay, yeah. So I spent a fair bit of time working in the horse racing industry, and part of that, I travelled. So I worked overseas in Singapore, and I suppose my last stint overseas was in Japan. As part of that, I discovered that there was actually a school in Brisbane that was teaching Japanese students, a training organisation teaching Japanese students about how to work in the racing industry. It's obviously a lot more prestigious in Japan than it is here. So there was obviously people paying to come back. So I ended up, lucky enough, got a job at the school there. And one thing led to another. I started off initially as a riding instructor. Then they asked me to step into the classroom. I stepped into the classroom and started doing classroom training. The resources were very light on. So, I sort of questioned that, and they said, well, can you build something better? So I did, and that basically started me down the path of learning design, but also, that sort of training and facilitation. And I suppose after, probably about 7 or 8 years there, I sort of thought, okay, I've got to make a decision, fork in the road. Do I stay in the race industry, or do I move off into the training and development space? And that was a little while ago now. So I think, so I suppose I started that journey in the training space a bit over 20 years ago now. So,
that's a long time. That's what I really find fascinating about every guest on this show is what led them down this pathway. And I guess when you were planning your career early on, you probably wouldn't have thought this is where you'd end up.
No, it wasn't. It certainly, as sort of being in the training and facilitation, learning space, it certainly was not something I did. I left school, didn't want to go to university. I'd had enough of school, and certainly getting into the learning field was certainly nothing I'd ever experienced. But certainly not alone. In my travels, I've actually found 2 people who have actually left school with the idea of wanting to get into learning design or into that space. Most people that are in the facilitation space in the learning design space have fallen into it because they were good at what they did, and then they had this natural ability to explain it to people, and then there's that sort of that progression. But very few, I think, actually leave with the idea of going, I'm going to become a facilitator, or I'm going to become a learning designer. So
it's really cool because then we can bring our own sort of backgrounds into what we do. My first job out of university was working in instructional design. I did it for a year. Matt, I've got to say I hated it. Like, I was sitting behind a computer, I was doing all this design work. The good thing is I look back on that and think, thank goodness I learnt those skills. I think they're so important when it comes to training design. Would you sort of say the same thing? How's your background in online design really helped you with the classroom stuff and with what you do now?
Yeah, look, it certainly has. Just to sort of think about things in a different way and to approach it from not just going, okay, this is the base content, but think about, well, what's the experience that we want people to have? And also you mentioned about, obviously people coming into things with different experiences. Well, what's their experiences and how does that play into the design? And unfortunately, we see a lot of design that is very much, one size fits all model that doesn't cater for that approach of people with different experiences. And I think that's a big thing to sort of bring into that, is to understand that, yes, there's a whole range of different experiences that people have had, good and bad. and certainly need to accommodate those in that design and also when you're facilitating any sort of learning experience.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the one size fits all is an approach you see. And I've certainly felt that, with staff inductions or compliance training. It's like, I remember one time I was doing like a fire safety course in my online induction. And I thought there is never a time where I'm going to be in a coal mine putting out a fire. So I was like very curious about that. That's one thing that frustrates you, that one size fits all. Is there anything else that you see people doing wrong? It just seems like every time I go on Facebook, someone is running an online program. So what are people not doing right when it comes to online design?
How much time do we have? I suppose a couple of things is, one is that people going, okay, well, I want to take my face-to-face course and I want to put it online, and expecting that that's going to duplicate the same, and it's not. It's completely different. So I think that there's an expectation to look at, well, how is this going to actually change? How are we going to make this different? Because we are talking about two different environments. But then also I see people not actually considering all of the possibilities that's there. We see a lot of online where it's put there and people get on there and they're very much isolated. But yet we've got so many tools and technologies available to engage and to build community and give people opportunity to collaborate in the social space. And I think that's one of the things a lot of people actually enjoy with the face-to-face is the fact that they actually can get to talk to people and meet people and stuff. So we forget that as well. We sort of go, okay, it's just all about content and let's just put the content online. But it's not. We still need to think about what is that experience that we want people to have in that online space. The other piece, I suppose, is that quite often, we see that the online is sort of this one and done event, and it's not, and the great quote, it's not about the wedding, but it's about the marriage. And so often we focus on that one event, but we don't think about, well, what happens after that event? And I suppose, if you elaborate on that, you could also think about, well, what needs to happen before the event? We don't just, apart from, married at first sight, we don't just get into marriage. There's all of this stuff that happens before that event. And then there's all the stuff that happens after. And the learning experience, whether it be face-to-face or online, needs to consider that as well. And I often see, the online is like, okay, it's just a one-piece online resource. Great, someone's done it. That's it, done. Okay, cool. They've learned. Well, yes, they may have learnt some stuff, but have they actually been given an opportunity to apply it? Is there a way to engage with them afterwards to help with that retention of information, to get them, thinking about it, applying it after the main event?
There's so much to pick up on there. You've brought out some really great points. The first point you raised was a lot of people just take their face-to-face content and put it into an online, like just literally just duplicate the slides and upload them into modules, maybe have a little assessment and go, ta-da, this is my online program. What is your suggested process if someone listening is like, that's what I do? What should they be doing instead? What are some little pointers for them?
Look, I think in some cases, one of the things you probably should do is not throw away the stuff, but certainly put it away and don't think about that. We certainly go through a process where, we want to go back and think about, well, what is it that you want people to achieve as part of this experience? Go back to the start. Because one of the issues we see, people picking up a face-to-face workshop, is there's this underlying assumption that the objectives and everything have been determined correctly, and those objectives have not changed at all. And so when you pick up that existing resource, you're going, okay, well, this is perfect, and then we're going to convert it, and we don't know that. So I'd be looking at putting that aside and going back and doing some analysis and really saying, okay, what is it we want people to achieve as part of this online experience? Think about what are the experiences that people already have, and also what are the roadblocks that they may be having as part of that. Once you've sort of done that sort of bit of analysis, and you can look at something like Kathy Moore's action mapping process, where you can actually then go, right, we've got this objective. So what is it that we need people to do to be able to achieve that objective? And then, well, what are the activities we get them to do as part of that? Well, what do they need to know as part of those activities? And then from there, once you've got that mapped out, then you sort of go back to your content and go, right, well, okay, so people need to know X, Y, Z. Okay, cool. Here we go. I've got these 5 slides that explains it. And then going, okay, now how can I take that and put it together in an online format that is actually going to explain it well without being too dull or too annoying as well,
What does it too annoying look like for you?
Look, we see things like unnecessary animations, things coming in on the screen and stuff like that. Quite often, it used to be when PowerPoint first came out and, well, not so much first came out, but when PowerPoint came out and there was animations in PowerPoint, you could see the people who just discovered animations in PowerPoint
Yes.
and things flying everywhere. So we sort of see that. And also this idea of locking content down as well, where we see people go, oh, okay, we need to lock this content down so that we can ensure that they've read that. And again, you're basing this assumption on that they don't have that knowledge. And it actually then can become quite frustrating for the user because they're going, hang on, I want to move forward. Oh, no, I can't move forward until 3 seconds have elapsed or of whatever it might be. And I also go back to people forget about how we used to learn before online. Before online, we'd go to a library if we needed to find information. Now we go to Google. Okay. But we'd go to a library. And I've never walked into a library and never had a librarian walk up to me and say, you have to read this book. And when I open up that book, it never forced me to go page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. I could flip it and go to page 60, and then I could go page 80. And yet, when we then build these online courses, we've completely moved away from that model, where we're actually pushing the content at the person and then we're actually depicting or determining the process that they have to go through as part of that.
That's really interesting because I've signed up for a few of these sort of 5-day programs. They drip feed a video to you every day. And the first video is usually this overview that you've heard before. That's why you've opted in for the program. And you're like, honestly, then day 2 comes around and you kind of lost the momentum because day 1 just didn't offer anything of value. It was just, so it's really interesting that you've raised that point about the library. I think that really will resonate with a lot of us. Second point you raised when I asked about frustrations was community, creating community. And you're absolutely right. The best thing about a face-to-face workshop, sure, the content's great, but we can get the content off Google. The most important thing is the conversations and the people that you meet. And I think a lot of companies recognize that. So how do you create that kind of face-to-face environment where people are sharing in the online world?
So I suppose there's a number of different tools out there, but one of the things that we certainly do is look at creating collaboration around individual objects. So we build a small learning object and then actually get some discussion happening around that object. Cool. The same as what you'd do in a face-to-face classroom. So you go, okay, here's a video. Right, now let's have a discussion around that video and certainly get some of that social collaboration and discussion happening there. The other way that we certainly see it working quite well is with the opportunity for peer review. So by saying, okay, we've got a project, it might be a design project, or it could be we could be training new facilitators, and we go, okay, I want you to put together your presentation, and then as part of that, I want you to then submit it online, and then I want you to peer review 2 or 3 others. I think that this level of comfort to actually share your resource with a peer as opposed to the guru, assessor or trainer there's a lot more ability for comfort there. And people obviously are quite open to sharing. And I mean, you just look at the social media groups and things like that where people are quite open to throwing out that information. So I think that sort of is 2 ways that we can do that. So talking about specific learning objects and content there, and then obviously giving people to collaborate their own information. The typical discussion boards and things that you quite often see in some platforms is another way, but they do take a lot of work. There needs to be some really specific reason for people to go there. Just going, okay, cool, we've built a discussion board. We don't see that really taking off that much because people are going, well, I don't know what to put. I don't know what to say. They need some guidance around that. So I think if you can actually structure some guidance, and that's why we're using, a specific learning object and having a discussion around that, or a discussion around their own work, that's certainly where we're seeing much more of that community able to happen.
Well, I love that for a couple of reasons. One, I like how that you said the peer reviewing, because then you don't have to go to the facilitator, the guru. And that's what we try to make sure in workshops is that people are learning from each other, right? It's not like the facilitator has all of the answers. That's really cool. And the other thing you talk about community and the specific objects and being specific in what you're asking on a discussion forum. So I have this Facebook group and I also post on LinkedIn, and I always really am mindful of is the question that I'm throwing out there, because sometimes I've thrown a question out on my Facebook group and there have been crickets. And that's because the question's quite general or it's hard to answer. Like, it is a hard question. I think it was 6 months ago I put out a question, nothing to do with facilitation, but it was just, do you prefer spinach over kale? and everyone's just writing like spinach or kale. So you're just getting the engagement, or writing a question with an A, B, C answer, or post your favorite Jiffy, whatever you call it. Those simple ones where it's easy to respond in the moment seem to get the most traction. Do you find that helps?
Yeah, definitely. If people actually have to put in too much effort, and obviously that level of effort is going to change, based on individual preferences. But if they have to put in too much effort, then it's like, we've got so much stuff happening in our world. There's so many distractions, so many other things that we go, okay, cool, yeah, I'm going to respond to that, but hang on, I need to have a think about it. I need to consider what that is, because it's probably going to take me 15 minutes to actually pen a response. Then it's going to fall. Or it's like, okay, kale or spinach. Oh, cool, that's easy, bang. Yeah, that's it. So if it makes it simple for people, simple for them to respond, simple for them to access content or communicate with people, then certainly that's a much better thing. It's not so much dumbing things down, but just realizing that people are, obviously, very distracted is not the word, but certainly busy, and we've got a lot of things coming at us.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you, Matthew, are you team kale or are you team spinach?
Oh, probably have to be spinach, I'd say.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So what are your favourite, you talked about there's all this tech now that's helping us do all the stuff better. What are your favourite tools to use in an online environment?
Oh, there's quite a few different tools. I suppose a couple of the ones, without getting too specific, but in terms of authoring tools, a couple of ones that we're doing, Domino Flow, Evolve, 2 of them. And one of the reasons for that is that they actually provide a fully responsive authoring tool. So what that basically means is I can craft an experience through one of those tools, and then I can put it up and someone can access it on a desktop, on a tablet, on a mobile phone, and it resizes and reflows. And I know that experience is going to be pretty much the same. They're going to be able to get the same information. The content, the font sizes are going to be the same, etc. As opposed to some of the other tools where you end up with this slide that then shrinks down based on device, and then that can actually impact on the user experience. So certainly looking at that is one of probably the better things, sort of in terms of the authoring. So it provides that fully responsive without having to rebuild. There's some other tools out there that can provide responsive, but you actually have to build it in 2 or 3, or do a bit more work behind the scenes to actually get it to fit there. So that's a bit more sort of complex there. I suppose some other ones, certainly have fun with some of the 3D animation tools. We actually can create some nice 3D animations, some nice, pretty easy ones. Plotagon and Normal are 2 of the ones that we're sort of playing around with. Really complex animations, and obviously we hand it over to our animator, but these are just some nice, simple, fun ones. We just want to create an avatar on the screen that provides some talk that we can easily do that, but rather than a static 2D image, it's actually a 3D character that can talk to us. One of my other ones that I'm really interested in doing more work with, it's only a recent development, is a tool called Sparks. And it basically allows you to automate a lot of things. It's making use of the XAPI technology. So for those that aren't familiar, XAPI is a form of capturing learning data. Basically works on a basic thing of I did this. And so we can actually capture all of these learning events that are happening. One of the issues with it is that people go, great, we can capture all this data, but then it's a case of, well, what are we doing with this data? How do we use it? What do we do? And Sparks actually gives us this really cool tool to actually use that data. So what we can then do is we can go, okay, well, based on this learning event, then I can provide this nudge or send an email or respond to that person based on an individual learning event that they have done. We can also craft emails and classify people into different personas. So then the message that you get will potentially be different to someone else that I would get if I was going through the course because of where we're progressing. So that allows for some of that automation to happen. So XAPI is one of the cool things that I see, some great stuff, and we can do so much with the data, but it's a matter of actually having a tool to work with it. And that's one of the fun ones.
Yeah. I mean, that all sounds really fun, particularly that 3D animation. It kind of reminds me of that Microsoft paperclip. Is it like that little guy?
Yeah, it can be a little bit that. It's probably, not so much popping up and stuff, but it just sort of be there when we actually craft it into a learning experience. And I'm also playing around with augmenting my business cards. So if someone was to scan my business card, then the 3D character is actually going to pop up and talk.
My gosh, can you please sell that to us? Can you please create that that and I can upload my emoji. That is, sorry, an emoji. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so just different things you can do with the content and technology out there. I mean, if you look at what I was doing sort of 20 years ago to what we can do now, there's just so many tools and so much technology out there that it really makes things, we can really create some really great learning experiences.
That's right. And I think that's also a challenge because then it's deciding which one do you use. And I'm sure like this is what you do every day. So you're very well, I mean, you know people in this area, you read content about it, you're very well informed. For someone like me or maybe listeners that don't do this full time, that's that question of where do we even start? And sometimes when you choose a system, it may not integrate with others and it can be a costly investment, not only the platform, but actually putting all the data in. I love what you say. Was it that system called Sparks, the one that does all the data and everything?
Yeah.
That's really cool because I guess the number one question as an external facilitator or someone trying to bring training in for a client is what is the return of investment on this? And often we find the workshop's great if you're doing face-to-face, but how do you embed that? So can you see a tool like Sparks being used integrated with a face-to-face learning environment as well, like not just integrating it with online?
Yeah, look, certainly, there's a potential there to create some other events that are happening. And then you just can say, okay, well, based on this, then we're going to then send out emails and get people engaged. And there's other tools out there as well that you can do that with, One of the things that we certainly do a lot of is look at, well, what's marketing doing? Marketing and learning probably should be much closer. They're both about changing behaviours. One's obviously changing behaviour so people buy, but, obviously learning we're changing behaviour so people can perform better. So there's also some marketing tools out there that you can use that can actually automate some of these things as well. So where Sparks is actually using it off a specific learning event that you would capture that happens online, there's also some other marketing tools that you could grab that would allow you to automate things. And you say, okay, well, so 2 days after this face-to-face event, we're going to send out an email which contains some further information to sort of re-trigger their thoughts and get them thinking about that again. 2 weeks, send them another one, 2 months, and keep engaging with people and keep, and asking the question, okay, well, what have you done with this knowledge? What are you doing? What's your action plans, And so there's a lot of those sort of things that can be done after a face-to-face event to keep engaging with people and to keep getting them coming back to what they've discussed again. It's moving away from this one and done event. It's keep touching base with them afterwards. Often people go to a face-to-face workshop and it's like great, they're really motivated, and they go back to the work, sit down, back into business as usual, and it's like, oh, hang on, I didn't. 3 months later, oh, hang on, what have I actually done? Have I implemented any of the learning that I've done? Whereas if there's this continual nudges that are happening, people might go, oh, yeah, right, okay, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that. And also there's face-to-face workshops. I'm sure there's an amount of the information that people forget and they don't retain that information in the day. And so then obviously you can keep touching and keep sort of providing those touch points along the way to sort of go, hey, don't forget about this. Did you remember this? Yeah.
That's really cool. And I love that you say that marketing and learning are very close. That is music to my ears because I have a marketing background. And that's why I think I absolutely agree. There's some very, very close similarities between the two, both for behavior change, both for influencing, and there's certain skills that just are really parallel. That's really cool. It's about the analytics. Yeah, I've just started using ConvertKit, and I love that feature where you click a link and it can tag that person so they're interested in a certain thing. You can also set up sort of funnels after the workshop. So it could be which model did you love? You can opt into that. That sets off a sequence about that. I love that. But then I'm thinking, do I have time to create that? Maybe if a client asks for it, I could. This is all stuff post. You mentioned that when you get married, there's a lot of stuff that you do beforehand. What are some things that you would recommend that we do before the actual learning event to get people on board?
Well, I suppose to start with, generate some interest. Get people engaged in that and make sure that they know why they're going. You've probably experienced people coming into a workshop and going, oh, well, my manager said I need to go to this workshop.
Yes.
So I think it's very much around, starting to actually engage with people and generate their interest so that they're walking into the room excited to be there because they're like, oh, hang on, I've actually had this build up over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, where I've seen this information, I've got these things, and there's been some stuff there that's actually made me start to think about stuff, and I've got some prompts and I've got some ideas or I've got some questions, and I really need to do that. So working on the assumption that the workshop is actually going to solve a problem for them. then I think obviously, to put them into a position where they go, yes, I know that when I go to this workshop, this problem is going to be solved, and actually have that level of engagement there with them. And also, try and connect with them, not just on the standard training type level, but also engage and connect with them on an emotional level, so that they're actually coming in there with the right mindset around that. So again, back to, what's the problem that we're solving? How is this going to solve it for you? What's going to be the benefits for you? How is this going to impact you? So there's some emotional connection there. So if people are coming in a positive emotional state and want to be there, then the experience is going to be so much better. I mean, you've probably facilitated workshops before where it's like, I've actually got to spend time to get people.
It's a marketing effort to get people actually trying to convince them that they want to be there.
Yeah. So if you can do that beforehand, and so they're already primed and they're already wanting to be there a day or two before, then that makes your experience so much easier. And then the experience that they're having is also going to be so much better, because you are going to have this much higher level of engagement, and people are going to be very much more positive about the workshop.
Yeah, like you've warmed them up. That's excellent.
Yep.
Great that you mentioned the emotion, because if you're looking at standard training, usually you get an email about this is the date and time, what you need to wear. What are your food requirements? Those are like the essentials. So I love that you've got things like getting the emotional state up as well. And actually just combining that with what you said about marketing, there's tools out there where if you are drip feeding information beforehand and people are clicking or even opening, you can also tell the people that aren't opening the emails. And so as a facilitator, that's kind of useful. So when you step in and you see like Steve, who hasn't opened any of the emails, maybe he might need some more, not attention, but like maybe, I don't know, what's going on there. Just an interesting insight.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, some of the tools we've got our mobile phones, we've got tablets. It's so quick and easy actually just to grab your phone and just do a quick short minute. Hey, I'm Matt, and I'm going to be facilitating your experience and blah, blah, blah. Really looking forward to seeing you all there. Just that, so that people actually have met the person before the event. That's just a basic thing you can do to prime them. So they go, cool, okay. So when I actually walk into the room, especially if it's, large workshop, and they walk in and they go, okay, well, which one of you is the actual facilitator? Oh, it's you, because I've already seen the video. I've already made that connection with you. And again, going back to marketing, people will only buy from you if they know, like, and trust you. The same could then be argued that people are only going to learn from you if they know, like, and trust you. If they don't like you, and it can be often hard to form a good association with someone, immediately in a learning event. But if they've already had some interaction with you, you've already sent them some information, they've already built that level of trust that you are the expert to help them solve their learning problem, then their emotional state is, again, going to be much better, and they're going to be much more open to collaborating with you and learning from you.
So true, that credibility builder. I hate, and I did do it early in my career, I'd get up there and think I'd have to tell people about my experience, but you don't need to do that. Even recently, I've created videos, put it on my YouTube channel. The client sent the link out so they can see that. They might even click to other bits of the YouTube channel or go to my website. Even a guy in the first half day was like, oh, you've got a podcast. And it was actually, wow, he's actually dug around the website, so they're getting more comfortable and familiar. So brilliant. And it's so easy. Like you said, 1 minute, just do it. People are really scared to get on video though. Do you find that?
Yeah, look, they are. There's obviously, yes, a bit of thing of going, okay, I'm a bit self-conscious about getting on video and things like that. But I think it's just a matter of you just get on and just do it, and just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's the thing as well. Like, if you're looking at just doing it yourself with video, just having your phone or iPad and stuff like that, don't like it, delete it, try again, delete it, try again, and just keep doing it, as opposed to, you could always go to a professional videographer and set up a studio and do all of that, spend lots of money.
If you've got the budget,
if you've got the budget, that's right, yeah. But often I think it's just a case of, just get in and just do it. And I find it funny actually for some of these people, so I'm not comfortable on video, but yet they're happy to stand up in front of a classroom of people and go, and you just go, why? What's the issue? So, I think, look, it's just a case of, just keep doing it, keep practicing until you sort of get it. I mean, I sort of look at videos that even now that I do and I go, oh, God.
Me too.
Am I doing that? But then people watch it and go, oh, that's a great video. And I'm going, yeah, okay. I don't like that part, but obviously people aren't. So I think obviously, we're probably our worst critic. Can be very, very self-conscious in terms of how we evaluate ourselves. So I think we need to be a little bit less conscious. And again, community, put a video together, throw it out to your community and go, what do you think? Use other people use your peers to review it. Don't just rely on your own thing, because as I said, if you're the worst critic, and obviously some people are more critical than others, you're never going to get the content out there. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've been posting on LinkedIn this week on videos, and there's been a couple of this is and I just it was the third attempt, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. This is actually exhausting. And will it get any better? I don't think so. So and that's the thing. I think people like that authenticity as well. Even if you stuff up a few words, you'll really notice it, but no one else really will.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Early on, I probably shouldn't tell this.
You got to tell it.
I actually implemented my Tiger strategy once. I was going through trying to do some videos. It wasn't working. So I brought in my Tiger strategy.
What's that?
Which was, I sat down and had a couple of Tiger beers and then just went back into it. And it was just like, hey, yeah, I'm feeling good. And it's just like that sort of level of self-conscious went away. And it was like, cool. So
I love that.
Yeah, it might be, maybe it's a Cabernet strategy or something like that.
Yeah, tequila, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not tequila shots, but do something that will actually make you feel a little bit more relaxed and just get in there and just do it. Yeah,
I think so. I think that biggest hurdle is always the first couple of, and once you get over that and start doing it consistently, then it becomes a lot easier and you're a lot less critical. And you may not need the alcohol after a few more.
No, that's right. No, I don't. Certainly don't.
We'll just make sure
don't drink before over video.
Thanks for sharing that and being so open. So just to wrap up, we talked a lot about online. Let's talk about face-to-face, because you do that as well. So how do you sort of prepare, like the night before, the day of a big workshop, new client, feeling a little bit nervous? How do you focus and get your energy together?
Look, I mean, for me, the day of is probably just getting in and just making sure I've got the room set up right and everything like that, and making sure that all the tools and technologies are there. I probably would do a run through of my presentation the day before, just sort of getting it back into my head, but I certainly don't do that on the day. I sort of just spend the morning of a presentation is basically just getting there and just getting set up. And I sort of think, well, if I'm not ready in the morning, then I'm not ready at all. So so certainly doing that. Obviously, that look at what we can do in the weeks before that, as I said, to connect and prime with people and stuff like that. Yeah, so for me, it's more just the day before, do that review, make sure I've got it all right, understand where I'm at, and have an understanding of that. But also, I've delivered one workshop a number of times, and it's been different every time because of the different audience, different people in the room, different expectations that they want to get out of it. And so then you go, and so it's a case of, okay, well, cool, they want to get out of this. I used to run an e-learning essentials workshop. That was good. And then I ran another one was an instruction design workshop. So with e-learning essentials, we knew that people were in there and they wanted to learn about e-learning. What I was finding was with the instruction design workshop that initially people wanted to know about, basic instructional design. But over time, we found more and more people were coming and were going, okay, well, what is it? What are you trying to do? And they went, we want to learn about how to get content online. Da, da, da. So some of the presentation and the workshop that we actually had was more around just basic instructional design and building for face-to-face workshops, which really didn't meet their needs. So then it was a case of, okay, well, we've got to switch and we've got to change that a little bit. And sometimes, you do that on the fly. And so, for me, it's, just get set up on the day and then just take it easy and
awesome.
Wait,
and do you
wait for people to arrive. So,
Yeah, that's right. Do you have a favourite sort of icebreaker or activity that you use in workshops?
Not really. I'm not a huge icebreaker for the sake of icebreaker person. Look, I suppose one of my favourite activities, probably because a lot of what I'm doing is around the aspects of learning design. I often like starting off with and getting people to tell me about their best and also their worst learning experiences.
Cool.
And I find that really helps to set the scene. It starts people thinking about learning design, what they've experienced. And so again, sort of switching them on a little bit and making them think, okay, well, this is where we've been. And so many of them probably could have written up the worst experiences on the board before they arrived, because they're generally all pretty much the same sort of things that people are saying. But it certainly does give us a good framework, and I certainly leave that up there. And sort of, when we're going through the rest of the workshop, I can refer back and say, remember how you said,
yes,
this
you didn't like that,
you hate this, right? Let's remember we need to avoid this. So
awesome.
So I think that sort of works as a really good. So I think activities that provide some relevance to what they're doing and get them switched on for the day.
I think so. It's a really good sort of primer or anchor. if you have that up as well as the criteria to things to avoid, it's very clever.
Yeah, some icebreakers, we sort of see icebreakers are more sort of, get to know the people or whatever, which can be handy, but I think it's more like, let's switch you on, let's start talking about the topic and the subject. I prefer to see those activities happening.
Yeah, fantastic. Matthew, you have given us so much great information, particularly for facilitators that want to move into online and scale what they do. If people would like to find out more about what you do, find some of your helpful resources and articles, where should they go?
I suppose you can jump on our website, superblearning.com.au, or follow me on LinkedIn. So we've got a channel there on LinkedIn, connect with me there. So that's probably one of our two main places. Also Facebook, we've got a Superb Learning Facebook page as well. So we're sort of sharing a fair bit of information across those channels. But yeah, we've got some free resources, some ebooks, and we've got a persona template there if people want to sort of download to actually work out, well, who are the personas of my learners? We've got a free persona template sitting on our website there. So people can download that and help them to actually think about, well, who is actually the people that I'm delivering this learning experience for.
That is so helpful. Thank you. And we'll link to all of those channels, resources on the show notes for this episode. Matthew, it's been great reconnecting. And every time I meet you, I learn something new. So this is quite a selfish conversation because I'm really interested in online design, but that's what the value of podcasting is, being able to record something like this. And we get so many questions in our Facebook group about the best tools and how to create community online. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks for being on the show.
It's been great to have a chat, and looking forward to hearing more of your podcasts. You've always got some great people on, and there's always great value out of the podcast. So
Thanks, Matt. Cheers. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. You've reached the end of another episode of the First Time Facilitator podcast. Connect with the show at firsttimefacilitator.com or follow me on Instagram at Leanne Hughes to find out what I'm up to during the week. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with someone who will also appreciate the insight, and make it easier for yourself and subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice. Thank you so much for listening, and chat to you next week.